I hate my job. You should only have to work your contracted hours. Any more hours is a favor to the company or your manager. And if they keep asking you to work longer hours, or you're forced to feel like you need to work longer hours to do your job successfully, then the company needs to hire more people or they simply can't do the business they are in. Unfortunately, I didn't see those red flags when I joined 8 months ago. At the interview, the guy asked if I was okay to do the occasional overtime. I said yes, that's fine. After I joined, a coworker left shortly after, red flag 1. This meant that I had his work and now my own. The company kept telling me they would hire people in the new year, but 7 months in, I am still on my own. I told my manager the volume of work was too high for me, causing me to work evenings and weekends. He said he has no answers for me, red flag 2. My manager asked me to show him evidence that I am overworked and not just mismanaging my time. Screw that. Come the new year, I am leaving. I shouldn't have to prove to anyone that I am being overworked. A couple old senior partners, lots of young employees, and nothing in between. That means there's no opportunity to move up, they can't get people to stay, and can't get lateral transfers. They work young folks for as long as they can, and the young folks leave once they figure out the company sucks. That's a fantastic distinction, and one I was coming in here to make, albeit for different reasons. It could also mean a couple of other things, none of them are good. Their processes are so unique/non-transferable, they hire young out of college because anyone established in the industry would reject them. They hire young because the pay is shit. They hire young because they assume young folks won't know any better. Had an interview somewhere, they offered 20 to 23 starting. Being new in this field, when they asked how much I was expecting to be paid, I said, well, you guys are offering 20 to 23 starting, and being new in the field, I think 20 would be good. Their response was, oh, well, that's kind of a red flag for us. Usually when someone starts with us, they'll say, I'll take $17 until I can prove to you that I'm worth the $20, so you'll see why we're hesitant. My response, then why would you offer $20 at your low end? I didn't get a call back. I can't imagine they would actually believe someone would buy that. It sounds so funny. Trying to rush a decision out of you once the offer is made. I once interviewed with a company where I would have been relocating across the country to work for them. There were 3 rounds of interviews and they left me completely in the dark for weeks on end between each round before inviting me to the next round within just a few days of when the interview would take place. After the final interview, it was over a month of silence from them until they made an offer, but told me I had less than 24 hours to let them know my decision. I would have been moving 2,000 miles away from home to a place I had never been or even seen before. Interviews were completely virtual. They wanted me to start 6 days after the offer had been made. When I asked if there was any flexibility for me to have more time to think it over or have more time to move out there, they said no. They needed the decision the next day, and if I accepted, I would be starting in less than a week. I declined the offer. In other words, they hired someone other than you, who quit or was fired, and they needed to replace them ASAP. There's a misery wall when walking into work. When you pass a certain point in the building, the feeling changes significantly. If you know, you know. Yes, I was interviewing at Wayfair, in the corporate office. I was in their normal waiting room. Everything was fine and dandy. Then I was sent to sit outside an office near the back of the place where my interviews were going to be held. I sat there 3 minutes, looked around at people, had a sense of dread, and left. I walked out and told the receptionist, I can't do this here. It's not what I want, and left. I got called 3 times after that asking if I wanted to reschedule. They seemed way desperate. Any job ad that doesn't mention the name of the company should raise suspicions, doubly so if it's anything to do with sales. Got done by that trick once. Turned up to the interview, and the job was going door to door selling vacuums for Kirby Vacuums. Fell for this once. Answered an ad for an office administrative assistant. Turned out to be selling crappy knockoff toys door to door. And the guy I was paired with was assigned a commercial area, so he pulls up to an auto shop ready to try to sell these mechanics this shit. I went, "Hey, the train station is over there. I'm going home." He tried to argue. I just walked off. Scammers. The sink or swim technique. It was my first day as a cashier. I got a couple of hours of training. Then I was by myself, and we were dead. All of a sudden this rush came in, and I was asking for help. The manager goes, "Sink or swim. We're busy back here. Figure it out." Lol. Well, I did, but let me tell you, customers were not happy because I still didn't know how to properly enter in orders, especially modifications. I had the same happen to me at Lowe's. I was put up in customer service without any training, all on my own. I straight up told customers that I didn't know how to process their return transactions, make special orders, do internet fulfillment because it was my first day, and I had received no training. I called a manager over, and the manager received some feedback from the customers. I always ask the question, why is this role open? Is it a new role, or am I replacing someone? Why did that person leave? This really helps you seeing their reaction, and if they look nervous, it's because the person who left did it, because they were not happy. I also like asking how senior my team members are. If there's no one there more than 2 years, I would also be concerned. Final question. As I work in sales, I always ask, what's the KPIs, and how many are actually hitting their quarterly and annual target? This also reveals if they set their targets too high, and you can expect to enter a grim working culture where you're never good enough and can always do better. Last one. I like asking about how they are working to establish a team culture as well, since this will tell you a lot if people at work are friends or just there to do their job. I went on an interview. They had me wait in the lobby. In the 5 minutes I was sitting there, 3 employees walked past me. The first just looked at me and laughed. The second said, "Leave. Leave while you can." The third made the sign of the cross at me. Later, during the interview, the hiring manager showed me the Zen room, which was a quiet room you got to go to for 10 minutes when you got too stressed out. I was offered the job. I declined. Edit. 1. They walked by separately, at different times too. You had to ask permission to use the Zen room. I have a Zen room at my job. It's called a stall in the public restroom. It's my crying stall. I interviewed once at a very huge organization that had a site in the town I was living in, and these guys were so proud of the new top-of-the-line facilities. When they took me on a tour, they pointed out the lovely Zen garden area that was made for employees to go unwind and clear their heads. The problem with it was this area was positioned directly across from all the higher-ups' offices. Yeah? A similar one. They had an employee break area with games, TEVs, snack machines, etc., but it was completely empty in the middle of the day. Looked like no one had used it in weeks. It's almost worse when they're too good, purely from a hiring standpoint. I worked a week and a half doing the worst job I've ever had in my entire life and literally walked off the job after my boss threatened to rape someone and the company refused to file my complaint without my boss's approval, the person who made the threat. Why did I take that job? The recruiter was fantastic. He spent a ton of time outlining what the work was going to look like, all the safety requirements, and how seriously the company took these things. He had so many details about things the company had done to ensure worker satisfaction. Then I showed up on my first day to find that literally none of the things he had covered were actually enforced outside of the corporate office. It was a warehouse job, and my first hour, I was left completely alone with a broken pallet jack and told to move refrigerators off of a 5+ foot shelf with no safety equipment or training of any kind. I thought it would get better after that, but it absolutely did not. Many years ago, I started an IT shop with a business partner who was supposed to be the money guy and nothing else. And he put a now hiring sign up to attract customers, and so you know I can replace you. Couple things wrong with that. 1. Anyone seeking employment at an IT shop should not need anything from an IT shop outside of parts. But anyone sufficiently skilled would know how to source those cheaper than my prices. 2. I walked away after 4 years of really stupid shit went corporate. Life's been much better since. And he did replace me. With a tech who worked for minimum wage. Surprisingly, the replacement wasn't very good. As in, was unable to tell the difference between a desktop PC and a server. Edit. The place lasted 2.5 months after I left. Then he hired another tech who took the playbook I left and opened his own shop across town. When an employee quits or gets fired from the job and the company doesn't hire anyone new to replace them. It can be hard to tell as a red flag at first, but the temporary workload they added to your own over that was left over after the person left slowly becomes your new permanent workload without any changes to your pay or benefits to compensate for the additional tasks. The further out it goes without the position being filled, the larger and more obvious the red flag becomes. This happened to me exactly. In July, we had a guy leave. Had a new guy come in from another division to take over. But here it is 6 months later, and I'm still covering the former employee's workload as well as my already existing workload. I asked for a raise last month, and I was told, you need to take more responsibility before you are eligible for a raise. I applied to other companies and am getting offers for 60% more right off the bat.